Satan, Lucifer, Belial, Leviathan, Samael.
Welcome. This is Aleister Nacht. Tonight's guest is an author, occult lecturer, musician, performance artist, and podcast host. He's the author of a book called Friedrich Nietzsche and the Left-Hand Path, and we're going to talk about that tonight. It's a book of occult philosophy. He is also the host of Deferred Gnosis podcast, which brings topic-driven commentary from the fringes of culture. Tonight's guest, Shea Bilé. Shea, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aleister. It's a pleasure to be on. I've been familiar with your work for quite some time, and I do see you as a brother on the path, and it's good for us to finally converge and kind of construct something together.
Absolutely. I've watched a lot of your videos and listened to a lot of your podcasts, and your belief system is not that dissimilar to ours, and we'll explore that tonight. So again, thank you for being here. How long have you been on the left-hand path?
At this point, it's about 26 years. When I started more or less seriously, in our teenage years, especially our earlier adolescence, it's hard to really fix on one particular point. Everything is so new and ambiguous and beautiful and ecstatic. In those early years, it's hard to place a line. But I started seriously practicing magic around 12, and I quickly fell into Satanism rather quickly. That developed probably 6 months to 9 months after I started practicing magic. And, now we're looking at about 26 years.
So you have a very mature practice, I would think. So how did you discover the left-hand path? How did you end up on this way?
It starts with a broad, an interaction with esotericism broadly. I grew up in what some would call a haunted house, or a house that had a propensity for supernatural, or what you'd call supernatural events, and very vivid dreams early in my youth, interacting with spirits or things I couldn't understand or I didn't have language for yet. It was sometimes pre-verbal phenomena that I couldn't exactly put words to. And my mother was an incredibly spiritual and devoted person. She kind of identified with a non-denominational Christian. Like, she still thought of the Virgin, and she still thought of Christ and God in certain terms. But her devotion was mainly in this broader spirituality, discussing past lives, telling me about whether a family member was in the room, sudden smells of roses or something, or she would stop in a room and start describing events of the past that had happened there, traumatic events that would happen 50 or 60 years ago. And although some people would, everyone's reaction to that would be different, I could see a sincerity in my mother and in her words. And that helped frame my spiritual experiences as I grew up. And I think the first seed of starting to develop a relationship with the more shadow side, or darkened side, or twilight side, or whatever you would call this side of the occult world, was around the age of 4. I had what the kids now would call sleep paralysis demon, or what they used to call a hag attack. But the feeling of suffocation, near death, and then I awoke to this amorphous black ball of flame, and just above the bedroom door, and faces rose and fell into this orb, and some of it was family I knew, and some of it was faces I didn't understand. Some human, some not so much, and then expressions of joy and ecstasy and terror and anger and wrath. And then I went unconscious. And I that was my interaction with something I thought was truly, even now I would consider it quite sinister, not in a order of nine angles sinister, but sinister in the sense of something truly, something truly violent, or something truly aggressive or destructive, at least as humans would understand it. Just the type of spirits that we might interact with that are not necessarily constructive, not necessarily collaborative. And that was my exposure to something truly, truly of a violent nature. And so that gave me a respect for that kind of thing. It wasn't, I didn't run away from it and think, I have to now run the other direction and find ways to get away from this, find ways to never have it come into my life. But it was a wonder, and it was a curiosity on the world of the esoteric and the world of the occult, sincerely. At the same time, I grew up in a very chaotic time, in a very chaotic place. Socioeconomically impoverished part of Los Angeles, one of the seedier parts of Los Angeles in the 90s. And those who grew up in LA in the 90s understand it was a very, it was an incredibly novel and violent and destructive time. There was these clashes and this passion. And growing up as a kid it immersed me in a world where violence is just on the edge of materializing, where the corner store that I go to get soda or candy is now on fire because we're in the middle of riots. So I was exposed to a dangerous world. House got broken into a couple of times, and then I have memories like that of violence, of crime. And there was that insecurity of my environment, that desperation, which I find is actually a satanic tradition. It's people on the fringes who have a lot to lose. The idea of these ambiguous, emasculated angels coming down and negotiate love and compassion, that's just not going to work in the hood, you know what I mean? And it's not going to work in a desperate situation. I need something to help me now and immediately. And the truth is, the demons are closer to the earth. They're closer to the lives of human beings. And Satan and Satan and Lucifer literally in his story, in the theodicy, fell from heaven to be closer to man. And those are the things that made the most sense to me. So I started to distract myself with things like fantasy and science fiction and role-playing games, and because I needed to disappear. I really wanted to get out of this crazy world outside. And then very quickly, the world of the occult, the minute I was exposed to it, I dug into it. Because not only was it a distraction from the world outside, it spoke of power, and it spoke of the Theosophist. My first occult book was Psychic Self-Defense by Dion Fortune. And the Theosophist talked about astral bodies and air elementals and vampires in the astral plane and floating heads and this crazy, this occultism that just, oh, this is real and this is something I can experience. And then a distraction became a tool. I said, maybe now I can do something about my situation. I could finally figure something out for myself. And that's when I completely immersed myself in the world of the occult. And because of that environment, it went from, I started to read Wiccan stuff. Silver Ravenwolf, bless her heart. She said, you don't do curses. The Wicca from the 90s was very... it was castrated, and they've gotten a little bit bolder and sexy over the last decade, but in the 90s it was castrated, and it was, don't do curses, don't do negative things, it will come back to you. And I'm like, are you going through what I've went through? Do you know what it's like to have, the threat of violent reprisal every day going to school? Do you know, the age of 11 or 12 having people trying to beat the shit out of me? Do you know what that's like, Miss Ravenwolf? So I felt like these people didn't understand me. They didn't understand what I was going through. So I gravitated once I heard about. I think I had the history of witchcraft. It's that book, that hardcover book that had a sleeve that had the Goya, that famous Goya Baphomet. That's they're feeding the baby to the pot. This really visceral image, and in there there was a piece on Anton LaVey, the Church of Satan, and I immediately I was interested. And just like a lot of people in the 90s, I gravitated towards the Satanic Bible. I didn't get internet until I was an adult and could get a computer myself, right? So I was a late adopter of the internet, historically speaking. And so that was my route to Satanism. And although the spirit, I felt very spiritual and theistic, and I felt like the Satanic Bible did allow more room, and the Satanic rituals even more so for it. I didn't fully identify with the atheistic parts, but the rest of it, I sat in one sitting and I realized this is for me. This you define love on your own terms, and no, even if no one in this world loves you, you are beheld to love yourself and to think the highest of yourself, and to be told I'm a god. You are your own god. To be told that, I needed someone to tell me that. I needed someone in this world to tell me that. And it came from the Satanic Bible, and it taught me that I'm worth something and that I'm not going to tolerate anyone telling me otherwise. It changed my life and it saved my life. And that's why I still have the deepest respect for that path. But that's brought me along here, and I realize this is so important to me. And I want to devote my life to presenting this as an option for someone else in the world. I think it's a little bit better for us in some ways, and a little worse for us in other ways. But I want to have this option for other people growing up who may have had an experience like mine, who really need to gravitate towards something that's elevating, and that's self-loving, and that's powerful. And I've devoted my life to uncovering the history to this religion, to this path, to spreading its word, and to giving a gravity and a kind of robust history to Satan, to Satanas, to Lucifer, and the rest. So,
What are your core beliefs?
yeah. So if you're saying, are you more pointing towards theological, or are you pointing towards philosophical or ethical?
Let's talk about your practice.
My practice, yeah.
Yeah, your
Yeah,
practice.
yeah. So I would say I like this question because I actually don't get asked this directly. And I knew on an Aleister Nacht podcast I would have there'd be more chance that I get to answer this question. Uh, I would call myself an omnitheistic Satanist. I say that with a little bit of because I don't have another way of putting it. I do, in a henotheistic sense, that's to say that henotheistic means you're a polytheist, but someone's at the top, right? So technically, Catholicism could be seen as a form of henotheism, where you have Christ, you have God, you have Mary, and you have all these saints that operate as gods. Technically, that's henotheism. So Satan, and in some sense, all the different iterations of Satan are right at the top of my theological hierarchy, if there was one. So at the same time, I see Satan as encompassing all things. So I could even say I'm a monotheistic Satanist. But also, I see him as a force that exists in and out of all things. So in that sense, I'm a pantheistic Satanist. But also, I think there is more than just this emanation. I think Satan can exist outside just one emanation. And in that sense, I'm a panentheistic Satanist. I also am a polytheistic Satanist because I believe multiple iterations of Satan, but also all of the demons or daimons and spirits. And I give devotion to some of those, and to a collection of those. And that makes me a polytheistic Satanist. So I simply say the omnitheistic, and omnitheistic is the exact opposite of atheistic. An atheist believes there is no gods. An omnitheist believes that all possible gods exist. So, being an omnitheistic Satanist, I give me an aspect of Satan I didn't know before, and I will worship him. Um, all aspects of Satan throughout history, even the philosophical parts of Satan, I'm in love with that. I'm in love with all aspects of him, the compassionate side and even the violent side, the medieval hellmouth, the torture, the god of violence and hatred, criminality. There's a part of that I'm also in love with because I think it's a part of nature. Um, and then there's the atheistic part of Satan. It's almost like I like to say this. Me and a ritual partner and dear friend of mine, Lucia Lowe. I've told her once in an impassioned conversation. I said I love Satan so much. I love him even as an atheist. I want to love every aspect that even as an atheist I love him. That is to say, that I don't even it's very interesting. I will love you so much that even if you didn't exist, I would love you. You know, it's this rapturous. I try to immerse myself in a rapturous love of the divine, and it makes me fall in love with every aspect I come across of the satanic mythos. So that would be my theological beliefs.
Where are you located, Shay?
I travel a lot, so that's a great question. So as I said, I grew up in Los Angeles. I since around 2016, I've done extensive travel, and I haven't stayed in one place too long. Ever from San Francisco, I spent a lot of time in Texas. I spent time in New Orleans. I lived in Belgium for a year and a half. I am in the New England area now, so my home base is in Portland, Maine. But I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles visiting friends and family. I spend a lot of time in Texas, and I take trips to Europe. I'm a nomad, so I also like to kind of do trips, you know, driving across the country and things like that. So I'm quite a nomad, but right now my heart is in New England. I say my spirit is in Los Angeles. My heart is in New England.
So, is there a left-hand path, I guess, scene in Portland up there? Is it a
Oh,
big
that's
scene?
yeah, there's yeah, me. No, yeah, the in New England, okay. So you have a lot of I would call it superficial love of the left-hand path in Salem. And you have a slight presence in New York and things like that. You know, I'll say that New England conjures a particular mythology. You know, it's some of the oldest parts of our country. It has four solid seasons, often immersed in the winter. You know, you have a 5 to 6 month winter, and you know, you have a beautiful autumn where everything comes to life. I love that. So, in terms of climate, I love New England. And growing up in LA, where it's 105 degrees and you're seeing heat waves come off the concrete. Yeah, I had that, and I'm not. I realize I much love so, but that aspect of the seasons and the darkness, it lends itself to a more darkened view of spirituality. And there's a trad witchcraft scene. My friend Robin Artisan is in northern Maine. He's got a coven up there, so I visit him from time to time, and I've done some work with him. But left hand path, you know, Alistair, and you've probably known you've been in this as long or even a bit longer than me, perhaps. And there is no left hand path scene. The scene is wherever we meet for conferences. So when I'm doing, I just did a talk in LA. And one of my favorite places to do talks at the Cricket Path in Burbank, which is for everyone else, that's Los Angeles. And I say, you know, it was more of a seminar. I did it a little different. I had these prompts. I talked a little bit about my book, and then I had these prompts to say, is there, you know, what about nationalism? What about what about fascism? Is there a place in the left-hand path for this? And the next prompt will say, is there a left-hand path community? Do we need a left-hand path community? And I said something to the audience. I said, sometimes I feel this is the community I have. This is our church. I've done lectures in certain places, and then people will say, or on podcasts, they'll say, that's my church. That's my Sunday gospel, is I'll listen to a podcast or follow your podcast appearances, or I'll go to one of your lectures. I mean, I remember there was one girl that came to a series of lectures I did last year, and she dressed up in this nice, almost like gothy, but Sunday church clothes, and she had said that I dress like this because I see this as church, and I liked that. But that, I think the left-hand path were such hyper individualistic people, and that makes sense. And it's hard to herd cats. And this is our community right now, Aleister, right? This is our community. So there isn't, in some ways I say there isn't a left-hand path community anywhere in the world. We just kind of have to make it from time to time.
I agree with that. Absolutely. Do you have a coven or are you more of a soul practitioner?
That's also a great question. I've had covens that were me and another person. I also like to think a coven is when you practice with someone else, even if it's just one other person, but you're meeting and you're talking and you're doing magic. That's a coven to me. And in the left-hand path, we have to set our bar of expectation. We're probably not going to get 12 of us at a time. As a side note, this is where I really love the work of the Brotherhood of Satan. They get like more Satanists together than I ever see anywhere. And I'm like, where the fuck did you find these people? I have when I was younger, I had a dear friend of mine, and we would meet in the park. It was when I first decided to be a Satanist, and he had decided very young. So we're 13, 14, going to the park, and we would do these rituals together, and we'd think of the ritual during the week, and then we would meet up, and we had our little book of shadows, and we would go there to try a new experimental magic we were just kind of coming up with, and we would sign off on the invocations, and that was my first coven. It was me and my dear best friend at the time, and now I have a ritual partner that I call my ritual partner. She's a very close friend of mine. Her name is Lucia Lowe, and I met her in 2015, and we started doing these rites, and they started intense still, like bloodletting and what we call free bleeding, where she's also a phlebotomist, where she and deeply immersed in the body modification community. So she would you throw a needle in the vein, you just let it spurt out blood. And we would do these kind of things, and they increasingly got more intense. It's like, okay, let's take this another notch. And then let's go out into these caves outside LA. Then it was like, let's go to the desert and do this grand ceremonial conjuration of Lucifuge Ruficale out in an hour or two off the grid. And then it's like, let's do one in Ireland, deep in the Ballinstu Woods, about 45 minutes outside Dublin. So these started getting grander and grander. And now that I talk about it, it actually reminds me of my time with Nathan, my childhood friend, and how we were expanding it as much as we could as kids. I remember, I never talk about this stuff, so this is good. I remember getting, I remember I was 13 years old. I stole a couple of hypodermic needles from my mom's medication that she used because she had diabetes. And so I took 3 or 4 of them, and here we are. And this is actually crazy at 13, but look at where we grew up. And I was like, let's take out blood. Let's do blood sacrifice. And also, he had a razor. I didn't like the razor. Like we're trying to do blood sacrifice at 13, and I took a razor to my hand. I'm like, no, that sucks. I don't want to do that. Let's try like extracting the blood on our own. We eventually got caught by a ranger there because I guess some kids were in the park and they saw us and they freaked the fuck out and they told the park ranger. But anyway, I see a thing with me and Lucia Lowe and me and Nathan. I actually see that it was at our time expanding things as much as we could to explore this satanic practice. And with Lucia Lowe, it was like that as well, just on a grander, more mature scale. And so those were my covens. And anytime I practice magic with a friend and another practitioner, that's also a coven for that moment. I did a rite in Los Angeles at the end of a 3 week workshop series, and at the end we did this grand satanic rite, and there was maybe 17 people there. And literally right before we did it, these are people that attended every class. It was called The Religion of Satan, The Philosophy of Satan, and The Rites of Satan. And then we're going to do this strict satanic rite, celebrating the red dragon, giving praise to the great red dragon. There were 17 people there, and we hung out and drank wine before it. And I said, raise your hand if you're a Satanist. Not a single person raised their hand. And yet in there was this call and response type ritual, and there was towards the end of it, there was a lot of "Hail Satan," and then the whole room would erupt in "Hail Satan," and it was a level of excitement and ecstasy and euphoria that I can't fully explain, but I somehow know you fully understand. That it was the first time in my life I'm like, this is the satanic cult I was always looking for. During the Satanic Panic, there was all these legends about there's devil worshippers that live in the backyard, and we had a mythology in Los Angeles in Turnbull Canyon, and it was up in near uptown Whittier, the city called Whittier, and right near that was a mountain range, and they had Turnbull Canyon, and there was this old Victorian kind of house up there, and in the 90s, my dad would like to just kind of drive up there. And people would say there's devil worshippers in Turnbull Canyon and they sacrifice animals. And I was like, that sounds fucking rad. And as I was a Satanist, I kind of thought about it. And I remember watching The Ninth Gate, and that got me even open up more. I was like, maybe these guys exist. And what I found out as an adult is they don't. And I'm going to have to become that crazy satanic cult. I'm going to have to become that intense Satanist that hides in the woods and does all these things. I have to become the devil worshiper that I was looking for when I was a kid, and that also ties into we have to create our cult. We have to create our coven. It's not there. It's not necessarily there waiting for us.
So that really resonates with me about the refusal to acknowledge Satan because it's too much for society. And I actually saw a video, and it was a very good video that you did, contrasting Lucifer and Satan. Could you give our viewers a little overview of that? I think you did a fantastic job on it.
Great, yeah. The one comment on something you just said into this, no matter how available Satanism is to people, some people have a complaint with the Satanic Temple and saying this is they see it as, and I understand the argument, they see it as like kind of new and there's not much needed to call yourself a Satanist and all this stuff. But truly, it hasn't changed. Calling yourself a Satanist, people will say Luciferian, people will say left-hand path, people will say traditional witch, but still, calling yourself a Satanist and believing in it in any theological way is still something people have trouble doing. And they really don't want to do it. And even today, they don't want to do it. And there's a lot of fear attached to it. But so the Satan versus Lucifer, I mean, for one, historically, scripturally or biblically, Satan has his own, we could say her own in some way, but his own for sake of argument, for sake of conversation. He has his own history that's very distinct. The first appearance in the oldest appearance of Satan, because before it referring to a being, a supernatural entity, Satan just meant a physical obstructor. So the word Satan was used For humans fight, like warriors fighting, they pushed back. That's a Satan. It's a resistance, it's an adversary. The first time it was applied biblically to a supernatural being was in Numbers 22:10, I believe, where Balaam is riding along to Jerusalem, and he's stopped by an angel that obstructs him, and that is referred to as a Satan. It's an angel who is obstructing. In the Old Testament, there is no definite article for Satan. There is no Satan in the Old Testament. There is a Satan, like in the book of Job, but there is no the Satan. And that doesn't happen until a reconciliation, the apocalypse literature in the 2nd century BCE, and then at the Council of Nicaea a few centuries later, and then sometime around the 2nd or 3rd century, 4th century, we get Satan. We get all of the gods from the apocryphal texts, the book of Tobit and the book of Enoch, and you have these different Azazel, Satanel, Belial, Asmodeus. There's all these different contenders. Mastama. There's all these different contenders for the devil, but Satan kind of wins that fight and then becomes the universal principle of evil as we move into the New Testament scripture. So Satan has his, and then everything that happens over the next 1500 years of Satan being the man at the crossroads, the horned one, the old one, the ancient one, the god of criminality, the hellmouth, the lord of hell, the man at the crossroads. Satan becomes all those things. Now, the Lucifer part of it is Lucifer has a history from the evening star, the morning star. He's the light bearer, but connected to Venus, the Eosphoros, as you say in Greek. And Lucifer is kind of, there's a story in the book of Enoch about a fall. That's not Lucifer, that's Satanel, but there's that fall from there's this fight and there's this fall from heaven, but it's not associated with Lucifer. That was never the case in the original apocryphal text. You don't see Lucifer really mentioned till Isaiah. I think it's Isaiah 14:12 says that you have fallen from heaven. The Lucifer, the morning star, has fallen from heaven. But it's talking about Nebuchadnezzar. It's not actually talking about Lucifer. But people started saying, oh, that sounds like what had become folk history. They said, oh, there was a battle in heaven. That was a very compelling story. And that was in the minds of people, but it's not in the Bible. And there's another one that says Satan fell like lightning. But that's also, I think it's in Matthew. But that's also not a reference to Lucifer. So nowhere in the Bible, Old Testament or New, is there a fight in heaven and then Lucifer falls. And there's nothing like that. What that is, an appropriated story from the book of Enoch, and they attached Lucifer to it. Now, it became common knowledge in literary places when Paradise Lost by John Milton was written. And then that kind of fortified it in the Western mind when it was just kind of folk history. So historically, two very different things. Now, I see them as completely different forces, and I go to them for two different reasons. But they merge because, as I said, I can kind of see them as all expressions of Satan. But Lucifer, I see in the solar aspects. Lucifer is a Christ to me, a Christos. He's a forgiver. He's a redemptive figure. He's a liberating figure. He is who I go to when I'm looking for forgiveness. I know it sounds strange in the left-hand path to seek forgiveness, but sometimes it's not seeking forgiveness for anyone else. It's us trying to find ways to forgive ourselves. And Lucifer is the person I go for that. But in other times, I see Satan as a source of compassion and understanding. So it's not like Lucifer is exceptional to Satan in this regard. Satan is totally a compassionate figure. You look in 18th century, 19th century, but also Pax, written in the 16th century. where these people on the edge of society are saying, I want to live, I want to return to my family, but they're mercenaries or soldiers, and they find pacts within their armor, within their clothing that said, "Please, Satan, allow me to return to my family." So Satan has always represented compassion too, but I see these as two distinct forces, both theologically, and I see them as two distinct beings historically.
So tell us a little bit about your book, Friedrich Nietzsche and the Left Hand Path.
Yeah, Friedrich Nietzsche and the Left Hand Path came about, as soon as I started studying Satanism and what we can call the Left Hand Path, I started to become aware of the Nietzsche was mentioned quite a bit. The in the first edition of the Satanic World, which I don't have, haven't had it, but he does mention Nietzsche as a primary inspiration. But in his philosophy, especially if you go to the Devil's Notebook and Satan Says, you see references to Nietzsche quite a bit. So it always made sense that Nietzsche was a part of the philosophy. So I started buying books on Nietzsche when I was 13 and 14. And I didn't understand it fully at the time, but I tried to read it anyway. And so Nietzsche was in my life, but when I decided to pursue philosophy academically later in life, I decided I wanted to do my thesis, my master's thesis on Nietzsche's connection to Satanism. And because I went to school in Europe, they were a lot more open to a thesis like that. In the US, it would have been harder to find a thesis supervisor for that kind of thing. But yeah, I found a couple of supervisors who'd agree to it, and that's where it came about. So I then doubled down and I started studying Nietzsche in a scholastic way, in a scholarly way, exegetically, as we would say. And I started rereading everything I had already read on Satanism. I started reading all these academic studies that I hadn't read before, and I really dug into it. And it took 3 years, and I gathered, who knows, maybe 100 sources. I ended up reading over that time, and I completed my thesis. And on the plane ride, it was I had defended my thesis in Belgium. I went back to Belgium to defend my thesis. I said, let me make a trip out of it. So I stayed a month out there, and I had a talk at occult in Berlin. And I did my talk, and I was sitting in the plane, and my girlfriend at the time, I didn't know about Atramentis. I was like, I kind of want to publish this, but where is there a cult philosophy, and where is it respected in our scene? And I came to find out that a lot of people would have published it. Because when I published it, they were like, fuck, why didn't you give it to us? And she said Atramenis because they had Book of Black Dragon and she was into it. And I said, oh, Atramenis. And I looked up and I said, yeah, they do kind of have a philosophical aim. And it was a long trip. I was feeling like braggadocious. And I said, look, I'm going to send an email to them. I bet you by the time we land in the US, I'll have a contract. And when I dropped in, I think it was in JFK, I got my messages, and it was a message from Peter Hamilton Giles, and he says, "We would like to work with you on the manuscript." So it was a fun, magical kind of thing. So I doubled it in length. I added a bunch of occult, references. I made it less strictly focused on academic philosophy, and I kind of expanded it for more occult references. I opened up because I didn't have this sometimes the strict constraints of a philosophical paper. What I found out more is that they probably would have appreciated that as well, but I thought they wouldn't. But I started to add more of my voice, more of my poeticism. I took more artistic license, and that's how Friedrich Nietzsche and the Left Hand Path came to be.
Is it doing well?
Yeah, that sold out in about a year. So they printed about 500 copies, and that sold out in about a year and a half. And then about 6 months after that, I got an offer to do the second edition, and that was just released in August. I added a chapter. because I had time constraints with over there at Atramenis. There was a whole chapter I wanted to include, but I didn't have time. So for the second edition, which was being through the new imprint of Miskatonic called Infernal House, we were talking, and they said, "Let us do your second edition, but add something to it." And I said, "Okay, sure." So I added a chapter, and they released that back in August. So the second edition is out. And then I have a Spanish edition that will come through Manus Sinistra. Those pre-orders are open, so that Spanish edition might come out soon. So I guess that's to say in our niche, it's done very well in our niche. But we have a small niche, you know what I mean?
We do. Absolutely. Well, good. I'm glad to hear it's doing well.
Yeah, thank you.
How important is ritual?
I think ritual is important for life in general. Ritual, if we think of ritual as a heightening of life, a heightened experience of expression, I think ritual is necessary. It's certainly necessary for the religious experience. For me, it's a way for me to connect to the divine. And I know this is an intuitive answer. It's also a way for me to separate from this world. In my like I said in my origin story, there was I wanted to create my own world, and that's what a ritual allows me to do to this day. And although my life today is a lot different than it was when I was a child, I still there's a separation from the rat race, from the stresses. We live in a very strange time. And so that type of separation from this world makes sense. So from a devotional point, I want to give of myself, the naked soul. I want to strip to my spirit and commune with the divine. And the ritual helps create a gateway for that by using our sensorial experiences, smells, lights, herbs, place, context. All of these things help elevate our spirit outside of this, what we might call a material shell. And I think ritual has that purpose. Now, on the other, Anton LaVey would call that ceremony. The first thing I described, David Mayat from the O9A, he would call that internal magic, right? So there's different words for it. For the other side of it, when we are trying to manifest things, we were trying to make changes in the world. It's kind of the same technology. You need to connect to the fourth and fifth dimension, right? We need to, in order for our mind to become manifest, we need to create an environment in which it is unfiltered by the external world. So we need to be able to project our unfiltered will. And so we have to make use of every implement we can, and that's the place of ritual or external magic. That's the point there. I think there's this individuation from the material world that's needed in order to project into the other side. Material and spiritual, by the way, I don't know if I like that dichotomy, but it is what it is. It makes it easier for us to talk about it. But yeah, that's what I think. I think for anyone for all practitioners, it's important. That's why I'm even impressed. That's the one thing I'm impressed by the Satanic Temple. They're secular atheists, but they are talking about the importance of ritual. I love that. I love that they're seeing the importance of ritual. I have a few atheistic friends, one of which every year we do a ritual, usually on New Year's Eve. And I kind of wonder if he's as strict of an atheist as he says he is. But he believes there's a psychological importance to it. So I think even for secular atheists, ritual is important because it always has that psychological effect. It might affect the way that you behave in the world. And that's what I always try to talk to people is even if you don't believe in occult power, there is a psychological benefit. There's an emancipatory benefit. There's a cathartic benefit. And I love that LaVey talked about both. You know what I mean? So I love to think of magic in those two contexts. And I think of ritual in those two contexts.
In doing the research for this video, I noticed that you were once affiliated with the Satanic International group. Are you
Yeah.
still affiliated with it?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I had I remember very years ago interacting with Zach Black. Zach Black had quite a presence. He was one of the first internet personalities behind Satanism. And I remember meeting with him in San Diego probably in 2014. And that didn't come without cost. I had a membership with the Church of Satan for some time. It took them I think 10 years to process my application. And they eventually did, and although I knew my beliefs would get me kicked out, I kind of liked that I was still a member, just historically. But when I hung out with Zach Black and that got posted, I never get to talk about this, and I actually have a bit of consternation about it. And immediately, people I'd been talking to for years, I had some good friends that I had worked with and followed and had conversations with, and they immediately blocked me and disappeared. And I think Zach Black became public enemy number one with the Church of Satan. And just me appearing in a picture with him got me completely kicked out of the Church of Satan. Like, of course, I wasn't told about it. And that really upset me that the Church of Satan was that fickle, that I had no defense. You know what I mean? Because what I used to do is I would email Blanche Barton because I know she was answering not Blanche Barton, but Peggy Nadramia. I knew she was answering the emails, and I would promote things, and they would post it on their feed, and it would get a lot of coverage. So I lost a promotional tool. I lost a few friends. So Zach Black had certainly created a name for himself, and I think he cornered kind of the less elitist part of Satanism that the Church of Satan represented and a more kind of working class Satanism. And I think that's perfectly fine. And so Satanic International is coming up. It was early in my world trying to kind of branch out into the community. And it was a fun friendship. And uh, but I didn't really do. He made me the LA chapter head, but I didn't really do anything with that. We didn't really have a meeting, and I soon after I got caught up in other things, uh, uh, and that relationship or friendship, not for any spectacular reason, but we just kind of drifted apart in a sense or went separate ways. And yeah, so I think that video comes up with a Google search still pretty quickly. So it's good we're able to talk about that so I can kind of fully explain it. But yes, I guess for a moment I was in Satanic International, but I didn't, there was no, I didn't act to any capacity with that. But I do have respect for that. Like I said, I love all corners of our religion and our community. So respect to Satanic International.
I'd love to have him on the show. What was it, 1,000 hits of acid or something?
1,000. Yeah, yeah, it might as well have been. I think it's
Just,
like I think
just
it's
to
like
talk about
27 hits
that.
of acid. Yeah, yeah, that 27 hits of acid video that he posted, I think in like 2013 or something.
Yeah,
It got, I think, like 10 million views.
I know
I mean, it, it
it
was
was
like something
huge.
extreme. It was extreme. And I think the fact that he was a Satanist took a back seat. I think that was just a wild thing. And I think at that time, yeah, yeah, he had created a name for himself in the early to mid years of YouTube. And since then, I think I think it's kind of mellowed out. But yeah, he did for a time kind of be the online voice to Satanism, for what it is. And so I'll always have respect for Zach Black.
Absolutely. I mean, I watched a lot of his old videos. I didn't agree with everything he said, but I don't
Yeah.
agree with everything anybody says, really. But
Yeah, right.
but his videos were entertaining and they were straight to the point.
Definitely.
I
Yeah.
mean, he didn't pull any punches about the real world itself. So,
yeah, I think he had a lot of fun stories. I think a lot of people related to it. I mean, he was open to talking about drugs and alcohol, and he
yeah,
just had he had a very like down to earth kind of, like I said, like working class blue collar attitude. He'd be smoking his cigarette on his porch, riffing on these things. And I think even if you weren't a Satanist, you kind of felt like this is really this is an entertaining guy, you know what I mean? So
yeah, yeah, he really, really was. So, what is the hymns of the Red Dragon?
what this started as is I'm friends with Sal Santoro and Popey, who run the Crooked Path in Los Angeles. And it's a fantastic occult store. It's one of my favorite in the world. It's the most left-hand path and satanic friendly. Obviously, I go there all the time. I speak there all the time. And, they were like, you should come do a talk, And I was like, you know what would be fun? I want to do a new talk on demonolatry, and I want to kind of discuss everything I've studied in that realm. And I want to have a good research project to dig into. Well, what thing I didn't understand is how did the diamonds become demons? And I wanted to dig with that same scholarly eye and really dig into the academic material and find out when exactly did it happen. Because I felt like I didn't have a good grasp on it. And I couldn't, I'm not the kind of person to, I'm going to do a class on Asmodeus or Astaroth. Let me tell you about my experience with Astaroth. Well, one time I was at a park and Astaroth came to me as like a bird and told me they like this kind of treats. This kind of ambiguous personal gnosis, which is fine. Everyone has their experiences with the demons. But I'm not the kind of person to get on and say this is the way they should be followed and this is what they are. I want to also say first I want to say this is historically where it comes from. This is where Belial comes from. This is where Astaroth comes from. And then anything I could say about Andreophos or Hyle or uh, Gl- uh, uh, Glaciolabolas, right? I want to know where they came from. And so I went in this. I said this would be good not just to do a talk, but to do a deep scholarly investigation. So I spent a month or two really digging in and taking notes, and I put together this huge 2 hour, maybe 3 hour presentation, and I did it, and I thought, damn, I did so much research. At the end of Friedrich Nietzsche and the Left Hand Path, I wrote a couple of hymns. Yeah, I wrote a couple of hymns, a hymn to Lucifer and a hymn of Lucifer and hymn of Satan. And I had talked so much about philosophy and the atheism of Nietzsche, well, kind of atheism of Nietzsche and kind of the atheism of LaVey. I'm like, I need a refresher. I need a palate cleanser. So at the end, I wrote some hymns. I was like, just so you guys know, I'm not an atheist. No, but I wrote some hymns at the end. And I really enjoyed that. And then I did this demonology workshop, and I thought, you know what? Why don't I do this with a few more? And let me put together a book on it. And I want to write some hymns, and I want to put some deep scholarly information that has only existed in academia, in obscure academia, and let me give that to the occult world. And in the same fervor that I did my first book, and the same fervor that I did for my philosophy education, put that to demonolatry, because I think that's something that's actually kind of missing in demonolatry. And I spoke to Theon, and because I have a lot of respect for Theon Publishing, and we signed off on a contract, and now I'm finally, and I've promoted Friedrich Nietzsche and the Left Hand Path. I had my second edition. I did it for 2 years, a little over 2 years, and I'm ready. I'm ready to move on. I've talked a lot about Nietzsche. This is one of my probably final interviews I'm really going to do about it. Not that I'm going to stop it. People will probably always ask me, but I mean, the curtain is closing on this part of my, if you want to call it career, this part of my journey. And I'm ready to move on to talking about the demons. and giving flesh to them and giving history to them. So that is my book. We should look for it like early next year. Publishing, getting the materials together. It's hard to say what time, but it looks like that's what I'm aiming for. So every day I'm working at it, and we should expect to see that next year.
Well, let
It's
me
it's kind
know.
of got like a delay or two because the second edition, and I ended up doing an 18-week course, and I was doing a lot of lectures, I was doing a lot of workshops, and I allowed that to distract me from the book. And I'm happy with that, but now I'm ready to finally get it out.
Well, let me know when it comes out. I'd like to let my audience know about it and be able to go out and check it out.
Yeah, and possibly maybe have a conversation about it as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, speaking of courses, you have a course called Fire and the Wine course. Looks pretty interesting. Can you tell our viewers a little bit about
Sure.
what it is?
Doing a lot of I mean, I love teaching. I love traveling, I love teaching, I love doing these workshops and lectures, and I'd done so many of them over 10 years that I had a lot of material, and I loved going to conferences. I loved the affirmation of finding that community, finding that coven, right? And that those coven moments. And I was approached by Robin Artisan and his Covenant de Savillac, and he has a site called Serpent Hall, and he said, "Why don't you do a guest course on here? And you can record them 1 week at a time. You don't have to do them all up front." And I said, "Okay, I'll do 18 weeks." And I had a few people in my life other authors who said 18 weeks that's a lot. You can actually cut that into two classes. And I said, "No, fuck it, I'm going to do it." And because I wanted the six history, six philosophy, six ritual magic. um, and Yeah, so I came up with about 25 hours of material. It was first released through Serpent Hall, and then Miskatonic approached me because they started doing courses, and I thought, wow, Miskatonic is a huge platform. It's one of the largest platforms in the world of the occult. And I thought, oh, this is great because I really think I unearthed so much of the history and philosophy that had never been discussed before. I think this is worthwhile to go into the world. And I more or less sold the rights, or not sold the rights, but signed a contract to get that material. So I was the second instructor. I think Jack Grail released their first class, and I was the second class to be released. So it's 18 weeks. It's and it's 25 hours. We have our own Discord channel, so we have like Q&A sessions and things like that. And that's a little community as well. And these are serious practitioners. You know what I mean? So yeah, so there's that. And as a side note, I'll send you a discount code for you to maybe post so people can use that to kind of knock some off the price. But yeah, so that's out there. And for anyone who wants to get an exhaustive, comprehensive look at Satanism and the left-hand path, Luciferianism, and so forth, they that might be a place they want to pursue. So yeah, Fire in the Wine on the history, philosophy, and rites of Satanism, Luciferianism, and the left-hand path.
That sounds great. Yeah, please send that code because I'm positive some folks that take advantage of that, they would love to do that. Sounds really exciting.
Excellent. Thank you, Alistair.
I always have questions that come from the public, and
Excellent.
I'm gonna give it to you. What happens when we die?
That is always a compelling question, a powerful question. It speaks to the tragedy of being human. And the beauty of being human is that we know that at least in some way, we only have so much time. And being Satanists or Luciferians or magicians of any sort, we can efface this tragedy and appreciate it, maybe in a way that others can't, or in ways that others might resist. I will say this. I will not speak definitely on the afterlife. I can't tell you, but I have had some hints. I lost my father in at the end of 2011, and I lost my best friend Nathan, who I used to go to the park with as a child. He lost his battle to heroin in 2017. And around the time I had decided to fast track my education, I was kind of going back and forth, working, building a career, jumping between that and school and wanting to, different series. But I said eventually, I said I'm gonna pursue philosophy 100%. I want to see how far this goes. So I moved to San Francisco and I kind of sped it up because my mom's always been ill a lot of my life. And I also wanted to graduate to be able to show her that I got there because no one in my family graduated, at least on my mom's side, ever graduate from college. They're working class farm workers down here in the South. And I wanted to show her that because I always felt my time was limited with her. And around that time, my father would come to me, and there were some things I never got to say to my dad. And in these vivid dreams, I would speak out to him, and he would avoid me as if he didn't want to talk about a thing. And then I would have another dream, and that would happen again. And at the same time, I started having dreams where I was talking to Nathan, and I'll talk about that in a moment. And I remember on just before I was going to get my mother and take her up to San Francisco so she could see me graduate there at San Francisco State. I had a dream the night before. We had actually just before that we did an October. I had an occult club. We called it a cult club. I wanted to call it Occult Student Alliance, but the other person I banded with wanted to call it a cult club. And so I had some students I was teaching there, and we did a rite, and it was beautiful, and we all did this. And I had my friend's ashes, and I talked to my dad, and I talked to Nathan there at the bonfire on the Hallows Eve. And so a few months later, the next year I'd be graduating. It was on my mind, and I was having dreams about my dad and Nathan. And the day before I was going to get my mom and do that drive, difficult drive, because my mom, like I said, my mom has been ill. And I had a dream that we're driving up the coast. It's a beautiful coast there on Pacific Coast Highway going up Cal. It's one of the most beautiful coasts that I've seen so far in my life in the world. And we're going up, and we stopped at a store, and my dad was there. And I didn't see him, or I didn't see him, but my dad was in the back of the store talking to someone, and he was saying my son's graduating, and he was so excited, and he was saying that's my son. He's going to graduate today, and I'm so proud of him. And I never saw him again in dreams, and it felt like there was a reconciliation. Like although we didn't have a deliberate conversation, it was my dad telling me we're okay, and I'm proud of who you are, and that was it. Now with Nathan, I ran into him a few times where I would say, "Hey, and this is a lucid dream," and I said, "Nathan, dude, where are you? Like, what has happened? What has death been like?" And he would just run. He's like almost like the hare from through the Looking Glass, or Alice in Wonderland rather. And I would say, Nathan, where are you going? And he would just, I gotta go, almost like that hare running from Alice. And that was the first two or three. He looked really bothered, and he looked uncomfortable, and he looked desperate, and I didn't know what was going on. And there were similar dreams that I had with my father in the sense that I was meeting them, and it would always be in a different place with him. Eventually, I had a dream where I was standing with him, and he was lucid. And I said, "Hey, what happened? What happened when you died? What has life been like?" And first we talked about like what happened. He said, I just used again. I didn't measure it, and I took more than you can. Typical heroin story. And then we laughed about it because, of course, we'd laugh about it because that's how Nathan and I were. And I said, well, that sucks, and I miss you. And and I said, but look, maybe we could do something. Here we are in the astral plane, and maybe we could do something. Maybe we can stop this. We made attempts to go through time. To people who've been on the astral plane, like this all makes sense. To people who haven't, it's going to sound insane. But on the astral plane, we think we can go through time. We can go through different dimensions, and we tried to attempt to save him, and it didn't work. And he had described to me actually before, he said, I keep falling asleep. I get tired and I fall asleep and I wake up somewhere else. And for the first, he couldn't give me time. When I tried to say how long it is, he said, all time is happening at once. And it's taken me a long time to try to isolate my consciousness. In other words, all of the Nathans and all the possible Nathans are happening at the same time. So you have cascading memories, is how he described it. And he told me that he gets tired and he wakes up again. And after we had done all these things and it wasn't working to try to save him, he says, I'm feeling tired, Shea, and I'm going to go soon. And I told him I miss him. And he disappeared. And, that was like the last time for a while that I saw him. And around the same time that I had that experience with my dad, I had a dream where I was just with Nathan and he was chill. And I didn't feel quite, I didn't want to bring up the death thing. I said, this time I just want to hang out with my friend. And we went to a show and we were like hanging out and there was another friend there and there we were in Long Beach where we kind of grew up. And when I wasn't looking, he kind of disappeared. He kind of walked away when I wasn't looking. And I woke up and I thought, it was kind of like my dad. I didn't see him again. And I thought I don't know, I'm speculating, but what it felt like to me is he wanted to visit me one more time. And so I don't know what death is. And I know I gave a big story here, but I give this story because I don't know what death is. And I don't know what happens. But if I had to guess, I think something like that might happen, like a bardo that they talk about in certain like Egyptian Book of the Dead and the Tibetan Book of the Dead is like you go through this reconciliation and then something happens. And I think that's a compelling story because I've experienced it. But in the end, I don't know what the great beyond is until I go there. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is I think we should fucking live like we don't get a second chance and we don't have anything after this. I think we should live every day like that. Like we're not going to get another one. So whatever I think the afterlife is, no matter what you think it is, this is the one. And you should treat it like it's the only one. It's just like the idea of extraterrestrial or intelligence outside in the universe. It may or may not be the case. You better act as if you're the only thing in the universe. We better treat the earth like that, as if this is the only place that has life. Even if you think there's life elsewhere, act as if this is the only place that has life. Act as if your life is the only time you get to have it. Treat it sacred, right? So that's how I view life after death.
What advice would you have for someone that is looking? They have not found their path. They're looking at the left-hand path. What advice would you have?
There's no negativity to come from. It's always a constructive exercise for us to expose ourselves in an egalitarian way. Look into different paths. There's so many today, right? So look into traditional witchcraft, look into Wicca, look into New Age woo-woo, look into John Dee, look into ceremonial magic, and look into the left-hand path. Look at Setianism, look at Church of Satan, look at Satanic Temple, look at Star of Azazel, look at the Order of Nine Angles, look at the Misanthropic Luciferian Order. Look at it all. Look at Kimanda, look at Palo Mayombe, look at Santeria, look at it all. Doesn't mean spend 30 years kind of getting deep into it, but as someone who's just coming into the world of the occult, expose yourself to these different things and find what resonates, and pick a path. If it really resonates with you, dig into it and study it, and talk to others, but not too much, because a lot of people some people might lead you astray. Find your principles first. Think of what you stand for before you go into the world of the occult. What is your ethic? What matters to you? What do you want? What are you approaching religion for? What are you approaching spirituality for? What do you want from it? And answer those questions. Maybe write them down in a journal, and ask yourself, what do you want in life? And what do you want from your spirituality? Do you want it because you're trying to get a leg up? So you're looking into witchcraft. Do you want it because you want to have purpose, because you know there's something out there and you want to start to understand it? Do you like it because you find a particular god or deity and you go, that is something I want to devote my life to? And once you answer that question, then start to, through that lens, look at these different paths and see what resonates with you. Think of the different gods and goddesses, from Thor to Loki to Set to Isis to Osiris to Satan to Lucifer to Asmodeus. Look at to Yamaya. Look into these spirit and see if that resonates with you, and what level does a god and goddess resonate with you. The only thing I would say is we should stop saying working with. I hate that term. Not hate it, but it frustrates me. So I started thinking of what other term can we do. I like saying devoted to, if you're devoted, but commune with. I commune with Astaroth. People say working with, and I think I'm sitting in a cubicle and I'm reaching over and saying, hey, what's up, belly y'all? Can, like, you want to go to the water cooler or get some coffee? I don't like working with, because that automatically puts it at your level. And I know in the left-hand path, we like to think at our level, and that may work for you and that makes sense. But commune with is a nice neutral term. So even if you do see them as brothers or sisters, commune with means I'm speaking to them, right? And I think that's better than working with. Working is very usury. And you know what? In Solomonic magic, they use the demons. And I think as left-hand path people, we should think about that a bit more, about using things, using them, or let's try to use language that gives them a bit more deference. But that's the advice I would give to new practitioners. And if you love the left-hand path, if you love Satanism, Luciferianism, and that resonates with you, start to read the different authors, become aware of these different paths. Like I said, there's Johannes Nephastos, there's the anti-cosmic Satanism, there's the kind of very diverse Michael Ford, there's Aleister Nacht, there's Sabbatica and Edgar Kerval, and there's Asnoth Mason, and there's Shea Bilé. So there's all these different ways to approach and learn about the world of Satanism, and I think start to boil it down to what makes the most sense and what serves you. And if it begins to not serve you, consider moving on and going on and so forth. But find out what your goals are. And if that practice is no longer serving your goals, start to ask yourself, is this, am I committed to the path in an earnest way, or is there a different path for me? So I think that's a question that left-hand path people, we just don't give blind obedience. I think the left-hand path, it is beholden to us to face the difficult question. Is this the right path for me? And that I can say, no matter what path you're in the left-hand path, that is a question that I think we should ask ourselves. And I think that's a question that Satan as a god and as a deity would appreciate. Ask yourself, is this the right path for you? And I think we should always ask ourselves that and act accordingly.
Shea, what is the best way that people can contact you?
I'm in all the socials. Some I pay attention more than others, but I was banned from Facebook in 2023, but they let me back in, which is great. I like to have a Facebook. And so I'm on Facebook as Shea Bilé author. Instagram at Shea Bilé, Threads at Shea Bilé, X or Twitter at Shea Bilé, YouTube, although I don't use it a lot, TikTok at Shea Bilé. And they could also reach out to me through my email. And I like connecting on email because no one can ban my email. It's Shea Bilé, Sheabile at gmail.com.
Okay, excellent. And I'll put those links in the description so people can check out your social media, check out your books, and check out your course as well, Fire and the Wine course.
Yeah, and follow me on socials, reach out to me. Um, I love to I love to have discourse. I love to talk about these things, and yeah, let's keep the conversation going, and look out for things I have coming up. So I'm focusing on my book now, but I'm always present for my course and my classes. So I'm there on my Discord as well. So
Wonderful. Shay, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight. It has been wonderful, and I know my audience will enjoy it as much as I did.
that means a lot, Alistair. I do see you as a brother in the path, as I said, and I appreciate you committing your life to this practice. It would be difficult for me to do otherwise than see you as a fellow brother, and I'm happy we got to meet and have this conversation. It means a lot. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. And for those of you at home, I have a Samhain ritual that I will be doing and posting on YouTube in a couple of weeks that you can use for Halloween. It'll be pre-recorded, it won't be live, so you can watch it a time or two and then kind of follow along if you want to do that. I certainly hope you'll get a satanic blessing from it. And for those of you listening worldwide, thank you again. This has been Aleister Nacht, Ave Satanas.